Hello and welcome to Indus News with me, Usman Lone. Well, we begin this hour with our top story, and that's an Israeli airstrike killing another Palestinian youth and wounding 3 others in the northern Gaza Strip. This follows the killing of 4 people in Israeli airstrikes on the Palestinian Al-Quds Brigade in Gaza and Syria in the last 24 hours. Palestinian officials say the air raid destroyed a residential building in the Gaza Strip. In a statement, the Israeli military said Netanyahu authorized the operation. Hamas says Israel will face consequences of this escalation. Well, staying with Israel, the EU's top court has ruled that food products from illegal Israeli settlements in occupied Palestinian territories must be clearly labelled. The European Court of Justice said this would help consumers to make choices based on ethical considerations. The court said Tel Aviv labels products from illegally occupied Palestinian territories as made in the State of Israel. The ECJ said the occupied territories indicate a state policy of population transfer in violation of international humanitarian law. It said the EU's regulations on labelling the origin of goods allow consumers to make more informed choices. Well, for more on this story, we're joined by our correspondent Mia Alberti, who's in Brussels. Mia, thank you for joining us on Indus News. So tell us, what made the ECJ take this issue up of labelling the produce from the occupied territories, and will Israel abide by it?
Well, initially this case was brought forward by this Israeli winery against the French government, but then during the case the governments of the Netherlands, Sweden and even the European Commission joined in and supported the French case. So this might have been a signal for the European Court of Justice that there is enough support across the bloc to make what were already existing guidelines from 2015 into now legally binding laws across the EU. So this happened during the case, and of course it is an enormous backfiring for this Israeli winery. And what consumers might expect now is, instead of saying and label saying made in Israel in products made in occupied territories, they will be seeing labels such as made in the Golan or made in East Jerusalem, for example.
Mia, we've also got the Palestinian-led BDS movement, the Boycott, Divest and Sanctions movement, and it's been pushing this kind of stuff for years, despite some opposition from EU governments. But now you're saying France and other EU countries are willing to say that, look, these products need to state that it's not made in the State of Israel. Has there been any reaction from these European countries about this ECJ ruling today?
Well, the European Commission spokesperson Mina Andreeva told reporters just a few hours ago, that this decision by the European Court goes along with the EU's long-standing policy that the consumers cannot be misled and confused by the labelling, and that she also added that the EU continues to consider as illegal the settlements outside of the Israeli borders decided in 1967. But then she was also very diplomatic and careful in adding that the EU and Israeli continue to be very close partners, that the EU continues committed to work with Israel, and that it rejects any movement by the BDS organization to isolate Israel, and that the EU continues to reject any calls for boycotts or sanctions against Israel. Of course, a very diplomatic response, but might not be enough for Israel to overcome this very bad news coming from the EU for them today.
Mia, thank you. That was Mia Alberti, our correspondent in Brussels. Now, as the war continues in Afghanistan, it seems some cooperation is being made between the Afghan government and the Taliban, as 3 high-ranking Taliban figures have been exchanged for 2 hostages held by the group. The freed hostages include 2 professors who were kidnapped from outside a university campus in Kabul in 2016. Our Indus News correspondent Manahil Ahmed has more in this report.
While significant security challenges remain in Afghanistan, there is some good news. as the Afghan government and the Taliban agreed to a prisoner swap. The director of Afghanistan and Pakistan Studies in Middle East Institute, Marvin Weinbaum, says the move could serve as a confidence-building measure.
I'm very pleased to hear that it has been worked out, because they've been working on this kind of a exchange for some time. Is it an equal exchange? Of course not. But there's a strong feeling here that we owed it to these two professors.
He said there is no shortcut to resolving the Afghan issue, and the international community must play its role to achieve lasting peace in Afghanistan.
If this is to end in any way which we would find the least bit satisfactory, it is a rededication to the Afghan state. It is a rededication to the strengthening of the state, which we have lost sight of by virtue of the fact that we thought there was a shortcut out of this.
Pakistan's former Foreign Secretary Azaz Ahmed Chaudhry says all stakeholders must play their role to bring peace to the war-torn country.
There is an emerging consensus within Pakistan that we need peace in Afghanistan, for not only peace for the Afghans themselves, but also for Pakistan and indeed for the entire region. And therefore, the last 1 year, Pakistan and United States worked closely, and we facilitated whatever manner we could, and there was a ray of hope.
Efforts aimed at ending the 18-year war in Afghanistan collapsed in September when US President Donald Trump abruptly cancelled peace talks with the Taliban. Since then, several countries, including Pakistan, Russia, and China, are making efforts to break the deadlock. Reporting for Indus News, Manail Ahmed, Islamabad.
Now from Afghanistan to the crisis in Indian-occupied Kashmir, where India has kept occupied Kashmir under lockdown now for 100 days. On the 5th of August, the Indian government revoked Article 370, revoking the valley's special status as a disputed territory.
Dozens of Kashmiris have been shot dead while demanding their right to freedom in recent months. An Indian fact-finding mission has confirmed the arrest of 13,000 youths and minors as young as 9 years of age. India's actions in Kashmir were roundly condemned by international community. The United Nations has expressed concerns on the human rights violations in the occupied valley.
I am deeply concerned about the impact of recent actions by the government of India on the human rights of Kashmiris, including restrictions on internet communication and peaceful assembly, and the detention of local political leaders and activists. While I continue to urge the governments of India and Pakistan to ensure that human rights are respected and protected, I have appealed particularly to India to ease the current lockdowns or curfews, to ensure people's access to basic services.
The EU, US Congress and the UN have condemned India's actions in the disputed territory. International observers say occupied Kashmir's economy suffered over $1 billion in losses in the past 100 days. Even Congress leader Rahul Gandhi has said things are not normal in Kashmir.
Unfortunately, we were not allowed to go beyond the airport. In fact, it's a very sad thing, but the press people who were with us were mishandled. Some of them were beaten. It is very clear that things are not normal in Jammu and Kashmir.
Rights bodies including Amnesty International has repeatedly asked India to lift the curfew and let Kashmiris be heard.
While staying with Kashmir, Indian troops have killed one more youth in occupied Kashmir's Gandarbal district, raising the death toll from violence in the past 2 days to 3. Locals say the youth was martyred by occupying troops during a search operation in the district's Gand area. The occupying forces martyred 2 youths in occupied Kashmir in the Bandipora district yesterday. Indian troops martyred 12 civilians across the valley in October during such operations. Now, the Indian state of Maharashtra has been placed under president's rule amid a stalemate over the formation of a government. No political party has been able to form a government after last month's assembly polls. The ruling BJP and its oldest ally, the Shiv Sena, parted ways after the breakdown of power-sharing talks. This is the first major political blow for the BJP since it was re-elected in May. Arvind Sawant, Shiv Sena's only union minister, also resigned yesterday. Well, over to Iran now, and it's rejected the European JCPOA signatories' claim of fulfilling their commitments to the 2015 nuclear deal. Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said EU states failed to hold a single commitment over the past 18 months. In a tweet, Zarif said when Iran initiated the dispute resolution mechanism, European signatories chose to ignore it. Yesterday, in a joint statement, France, Germany, the UK and the EU said they were abiding by the JCPOA while Iran was violating it. They expressed concerns over Iran's decision to restart nuclear activities at one of its key sites. Now, as the war continues in Syria, Turkey has accused the United States of not fulfilling its agreement of removing all Kurdish forces from Syria's northeast. In a media briefing, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said it's impossible to say that the terrorists have withdrawn from the Syria-Turkey border. Erdogan is scheduled to meet US President Donald Trump in Washington tomorrow. The Turkish president said he will discuss the agreement reached with President Trump last month. Erdogan has repeatedly said if the deal is not respected, Ankara will restart the operation to create its proposed safe zone. The US has threatened to impose sanctions on Turkey if it continues its military operations inside Syria. Now in Europe, Spain's socialists and the far-left Unidas Podemos party have reached a deal to form a coalition government after the Socialist Party won Sunday's general elections, but they failed to secure a majority. Speaking in Madrid, acting Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said the deal aims to end the country's political stalemate. However, the coalition is not enough to secure a majority in parliament, and they still need support from other parties to form the government. If confirmed, it would be Spain's first coalition government since the country's return to democracy in the late 1970s. Well, in Hong Kong, clashes between riot police and protesters have turned violent once again in the city's Mong Kong district. The latest clashes erupted after police shot a protester at point-blank range yesterday. Police have used water cannons and tear gas to disperse crowds of masked demonstrators, only to find them amassing again. Anti-government protesters threw petrol bombs at police, marking a dramatic escalation in more than 5 months of unrest. Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam said about 60 people were injured in Monday's clashes. She said the rioters were destroying public order and won't achieve anything using violence. Well, China has rejected the US and Britain's criticism of the crackdown against anti-government protesters in Hong Kong. Speaking in Beijing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Geng Shuang urged the two countries to respect China's sovereignty. He said Beijing will not allow any foreign interference in its internal matters. On Monday, police shot and injured a protester in the eastern district of Sai Wan Ho. A pro-government supporter was also set alight after a heated argument with pro-democracy protesters. Well, we'll be back with more news from around the world right after this short break. Hello and welcome back to Indus News. Now, North Korea has accused the United States and South Korea of hindering peace in the Korean Peninsula. North Korea's ambassador to the United Nations, Kim Song, said Pyongyang's goodwill gestures have not been reciprocated. Speaking at the UN General Assembly, Song noted North Korea has not carried out nuclear tests for months. He accused the US of pursuing a hostile policy towards the country, despite its nuclear restraint. The North Korean envoy also accused South Korea of double-dealing by modernizing its military during diplomatic talks. Well, Bolivia's toppled President Evo Morales has fled to Mexico to seek political asylum after stepping down at the military's suggestion. Mexico's foreign ministry confirmed the embattled president will be granted asylum on arrival. More in this report.
Caving into mounting pressure from the military, Bolivia's President Evo Morales resigned yesterday. He tried to hold on to power after winning a controversial election last month. But public anger isolated him and he ran out of allies. For now, Bolivia's military is seeking to restore public order and has mounted armed street patrols in La Paz and other cities. Meanwhile, police have arrested over 30 election commission officials suspected of being complicit in the rigging of last month's elections.
The only thing I want is to provide solution to this horrible crisis we are going through. Let it be clear, this is a transition. It is just to call for elections and for it to be transparent, just like the people of Bolivia want. They need it. We don't want uncertainty. It is absolutely necessary to call on for elections and for the Bolivian people to choose their government.
US President Donald Trump says Morales' resignation is a warning to other Latin American leaders at loggerheads with Washington. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has blamed Trump for overthrow of Bolivia's president.
The coup d'etat against Evo Morales in Bolivia was financed and directed from the White House, as have all the coup d'etats in Latin America and the Caribbean in the last 100 years or more.
The Organization of American States will meet in Washington today to discuss the situation in Bolivia.
15 people have been killed after two trains collided head-on in Bangladesh. Rescue officials say over 100 people were injured in the accident. Travelling between Chittagong and Dhaka, the trains collided at Barambaria, about 100 kilometers east of the capital city. 3 coaches were derailed by the tragedy near the Mondolbagh station in the town of Kasbah. Train services have been halted as authorities probe the accident. Railway authorities say faulty signalling could have caused the crash. Now, the 550th birth anniversary celebrations of Baba Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, have begun at the Kartarpur Shrine in Pakistan. On Saturday, Pakistan opened the historic Kartarpur corridor for Sikh pilgrims from India and around the world. Over 3,000 Sikh pilgrims from India entered Pakistan last week through the Wagah border. Up to 5,000 pilgrims a day can now visit the final resting place of Baba Guru Nanak through the Kartarpur corridor. Sikhs from across the world have thanked Pakistan's government for opening the corridor and lauded the arrangements made for pilgrims there. Baba Guru Nanak spent the last 18 years of his life in Kartarpur and passed away there in the year 1539. Now in Australia, raging bushfires have reached the Sydney suburbs. Rescue officials are warning that one of the 2 fires are currently out of control. 3 people have died in the fires so far. Firefighting aircraft are spraying red retardant over trees and houses. The New South Wales Rural Fire Service says the fire has been burning through the Turumura forest 15 kilometres from the city. It says there are 85 fires in New South Wales, 46 of which are out of control, while 14 are at an emergency level. The service says more than 3,000 firefighters are on the ground, supported by 60 aircraft fighting to douse the blaze. Meanwhile, the Rally Australia event has been cancelled because of the bushfires near its New South Wales venue. Well, from bushfires to heavy snow, which has blanketed a number of states in the United States Midwest, causing traffic accidents and the cancellation of over 1,000 flights. The heaviest snow this winter has fallen on states including Illinois, Michigan and Iowa. The National Weather Service has issued snowstorm warnings for the Midwest. The snow comes from an Arctic cold front delivering winter weather to the central, southern and eastern parts of the country. More than 1,000 flights have been cancelled after an American Airlines plane skidded off the icy runway at Chicago's main airport. The airliner had 41 people on board at the time of the accident, but no one was injured. Now, in other news, a 4-year-old giant panda named Bei will head to China on the 19th of November. This is by a cooperative breeding agreement between China and the United States. But the move is heart-rending for many. More in this report.
One of National Zoo's most beloved residents is moving next week. Heartfelt goodbyes have already begun. Visitors have started to pour into the zoo to say emotional farewells to Bei the panda.
So today was the appropriate day to deck out in panda gear. And then I have my little Bao back here. She's traveled all the way with me. So today was the big day to come in. I have plenty of tissues and I'm just enjoying my view for the last moment.
The panda has been living separately from his mother since March 2017. Now he is at the age at which pandas must be returned to China for breeding purposes.
Well, staying with China, the Wuhan International Tourism Festival is being celebrated in Hubei province. The event aims to honor thousands of years of Chinese history and culture. The festival has attracted 2,000 culture enthusiasts from all over the country as well as abroad. More in this report.
Performing Chinese folk dance, wearing shiny silk hand-food dresses, the entertainers attract visitors to the Wuhan Tourism Festival. Participants put a range of historical Chinese costumes on display, including those from the Han, Song and Ming dynasties. The 2-week-long event also features folk music and traditional archery.
I hope that I can do a little bit of work to promote traditional Chinese culture. We feel very confident when wearing hanfu because the clothing has gained popularity after our collective efforts of promoting hanfu culture.
Hair accessories and jewelry have also been an important part of Chinese cultural costumes. During the festival, craft maker Gu Xiaoyu showed her delicate hairpin made of materials like pearls and shells, attracting many visitors.
Our ideas of making a hairpin is to integrate traditional culture elements into our daily life so people can wear our hairpins every day.
The festival will continue until the 24th of November.
Now, if you're a fan of Disney, then a Californian gallery is preparing to auction more than 1,500 rare items from Disneyland and the Walt Disney World theme parks. The items for sale date back to the founding of the iconic parks in the 1950s. More in this report.
Disney's enchanted tiki birds, a bronze Mickey Mouse, and the doll from It's a Small World are all about to be sold at the Van Eaton Galleries in Los Angeles. The animatronic birds are expected to sell for between $80,000 and $100,000, while the doll could fetch anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000. The auction traces the history of the Disney parks through items such as an original map of Disneyland and souvenirs from ashtrays to hats.
We have everything from a file copy of the original 1953 prospectus Walt used to get financing on the park. We have doors from Main Street buildings, Haunted Mansion stretch paintings.
Around the world, people grew up with Disney's movies and the theme parks. A co-owner of Van Eaton Galleries, Mike Eaton, says these collectibles will bring back fond Disney memories to people.
People collect them from everywhere, and everyone has their own special likes. For you, it might be you remember that special toy that you bought at the Main Street Emporium, or for somebody else it might be, oh, that was my favorite ride, so I want something from that ride.
The History Walt Disney World auction will be held in Los Angeles over 2 days, starting from December 7th.
Well, we'll be back with more news from the world of business and sports right after this short break. Hello and welcome back. Now, Iran is looking to expand its export of red gold, better known as saffron. But the problem it faces is crippling US sanctions getting in the way of lucrative world markets for the spice. More in this report.
Saffron, the crimson spice derived from the purple flower, Crocus sativus, has long been an ingredient in Persian food and spiritual medicine. The majority of saffron comes from Khorasan Razavi province, where many farmers, merchants and shop owners make their living. Iran produces up to 400 tons of saffron annually. Despite locally consuming more than half of the produce, Iran remains the largest exporter of the most expensive spice.
Close to 95 to 96% of the world's saffron production is held by Iran, and that is why no one like Afghanistan, Spain, and China can considerably compete.
While US sanctions have affected the product's global reach, saffron still largely remains monopolized by the Islamic Republic. The head of Iran's agricultural department, Ali Mohammad Shariati, says 90% of the raw product is rebranded with a different logo in other countries.
For example, when the US had good commercial relations with Iran, the saffron made its way there through Spain.
Despite US sanctions, Iranian traders and farmers are confident the commodity remains of the highest quality.
Japanese car maker Nissan has reported a 70% drop in its quarterly profits. The company has also cut its full-year forecast to an 11-year low. Nissan's sales have been falling after the ousting of former head Carlos Ghosn. Ghosn is awaiting trial in Japan on charges of financial misconduct, which he denies. The company's new executive team is due to take over on the 1st of December. Now, in the stock markets in the US and Europe, they're trading higher amid reports that US President Donald Trump could delay the imposition of tariffs on EU auto imports. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has gained about 0.25%. The Standard & Poor's 500 and Nasdaq 100 also made marginal gains. In Europe, London's FTSE 100 has gained over 0.5%, while Frankfurt's DAX index also gained a fraction, and Paris's CAC 40 is also up. Well, it's a lovely 19 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all for me and the team here in Lahore, but don't forget you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Thank you for watching and bye-bye.